we're going to talk about SIPOC and flow. When we look at maps, like a value stream map or a process map, the connections between the boxes, the connections between the processes is really important. I'm going to talk about the notion of SIPOC as it relates to flow and mapping. When we do process mapping or value stream mapping, we typically have process boxes, and the connection between the process boxes would be queue or inventory. If we think about it from a SIPOC perspective, suppliers, inputs, process itself, outputs, and customers, now we'll start to ask different questions, and we'll understand better the relationship between the boxes. Not just what they do, but how they communicate, how they work together, how they satisfy the needs of each other. If we look at a first process, we're going to ask the questions about suppliers and inputs, and then outputs and customers. But if we stay together, the next process now has this first process as a supplier and inputs. And the customer process is now the process we're focusing on. By doing those two things, we connect them and we see where the gaps are. We stay focused on that. We also can hopefully take a look at where there's an opportunity for flow. And that's what we talk about with lean manufacturing. How do we create flow? How do we minimize the amount of times things are set down and picked up and set down and picked up again? How do we create that flow, that velocity of inventory information? So if we analyze the suppliers and the inputs and the outputs and the customer to that process box, we'll have a much better understanding of what the needs are for that and where the synergies are for its downstream customer, the next process. We also get to take a look at the black holes of information. What's missing? What's not communicated? How do we not get visibility of what's happening in that space? In a typical manufacturing process, we're going to have inventory, typically, work in process, that's the triangle in the mapping process, or we'll have queue. In an administrative function, it's really harder to see that. So we have to be extra diligent to understanding what the outputs of a process are, which happen to be the inputs of the next process. And they should have synergy. They should relate. They should work together. And if they don't, that should be exposed. And we need to make sure that we ask those questions so that way we can find those problems and develop a solution for that. So don't forget SIPOC. When you're doing your mapping process, most people are very good at mapping. They understand there's a process and they need to get the technical information of that process. But make sure you tie them together and make sure that the customer process now understands the supplying process and vice versa. It'll make your maps much more robust and it'll give you a better chance of creating flow and filling that space and that void between the two process boxes. Have a great day. Thanks for joining in.